What's good, fellas? So with summer coming up, and this is the time where most NBA teams are looking to improve their roster, I thought I'd take a moment to talk about some recent trades that turned a team's fortunes around. I'm only gonna go back as far as, let's say, 5 or 6 years or so, and I won't be including trades that just happened, like the DeMarcus Cousins one, since we don't know what's gonna happen yet. Alright, let's get started. Number 5. The Clippers trade Eric Gordon, Chris Kaman, Al-Farouq Aminu, and a first-round pick to the New Orleans Hornets for Chris Paul. Yeah, I know the Clippers haven't exactly been very successful in the playoffs, but ever since they got Chris Paul, this has been their greatest 6-year stretch in franchise history. Well, I guess that says more about the Clippers than anything else, but still. Before getting Paul, the Clippers never won 50 games in a single season before, going all the way back to the 1970s when they were still the Buffalo Braves. Now recently, they've won at least 50 games every season for the past 5 years, which is amazing relative to how bad their franchise has been. Prior to 2012, they've only made the playoffs one time since 1998. And that was in 2006, where they actually had a pretty good team, but that was just a one and done deal. Number 4. This includes 2 big trades from the Celtics. The first trade was with the Nets, which I'm sure you guys all know about. The main pieces of this trade centered around Boston sending away an aging Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, and Jason Terry for the Nets' 2014, 2016, and 2018 first-round picks, as well as the right to swap picks in 2017. The second trade was a trade deadline deal in 2015, when the Celtics acquired Isaiah Thomas by trading away Marcus Thornton and a 2016 first-round pick to the Suns. Needless to say, the Celtics basically robbed the Nets and the Suns and came out as the clear winner in both of these trades. Usually when a powerhouse like the Big Three Celtics start declining, it takes years for a team to rebuild and regain their place in the league. However, the genius of Danny Ainge pulling off these 2 incredibly lopsided trades allowed the Celtics to return to playoff contention after missing the postseason for only 1 year. Isaiah Thomas, a player who Phoenix and Sacramento basically gave up on, just recorded one of the greatest offensive seasons in NBA history. And from the looks of it, it seems like the Celtics are willing to offer Isaiah a huge contract at the end of next season, which he totally deserves. In addition to making the Eastern Conference Finals this year, the Celtics have the number 1 pick in this year's draft too, which is actually insane. Number 3, on 2011 draft night, the San Antonio Spurs trade backup point guard George Hill to Indiana for Kawhi Leonard. Looking at it now, this trade looks like it heavily favored the Spurs, but it actually worked out pretty well for both teams. The Pacers needed a solid point guard, and Hill was an important piece of helping them reach the Eastern Conference Finals multiple times. And for the Spurs, it's weird to say that trading for Kawhi turned their team around, since they won 61 games in the previous season. But some people forget that around that time, the Spurs were basically going nowhere. They were still great in the regular season, but in the 3 years prior to getting Kawhi, they got eliminated in the first round in 2009, got swept in the second round in 2010, and lost in the first round again in 2011 to the 8th-seeded Memphis Grizzlies. Duncan, Parker, and Ginobili were getting older and slower, and the Spurs needed someone to pass the torch to, and that's where Kawhi came in. He helped the Spurs regain their championship form, and the future looks bright for a Spurs team that we all thought would be done by now. Normally, I'd put this higher up on the list, but since the Spurs were always so good anyway, it's kinda hard to say one player changed the whole team around. Number 2, the Golden State Warriors trade Monte Ellis, Ekpe Udoh, and Kwame Brown to the Bucks for Andrew Bogut and Steven Jackson. The main pieces of this trade were Ellis and Bogut. While Bogut was a good, solid player and provided some much-needed interior defense, the major turning point to the Warriors becoming the team that they are today started off with getting rid of Ellis. He was a great scorer and incredibly fun to watch, but he was known to be a chucker at times and did not score very efficiently. The Curry-Ellis backcourt experiment wasn't working out that well either, as their teams had a bottom 3 defense in their 2.5 seasons together. Trading away Ellis also allowed the Warriors to permanently move Klay Thompson to the starting lineup, who was a much better fit next to Curry, and you guys know the rest of this story. A couple of seasons later, and the Warriors saw themselves winning a championship and then winning 73 games to break the regular season record. And now they set themselves up to be a dominant team for years to come. And number 1, you all saw it coming. The Houston Rockets acquired 23-year-old James Harden from Oklahoma City. Before trading for Harden, the Rockets were actually not a bad team at all. In the previous 3 seasons, they finished with winning records but still could not make the playoffs in a very competitive Western Conference. They were pretty much in the worst position possible, being too good to acquire a high draft pick and not being good enough to actually make the playoffs. Without a legitimate superstar, it looked like it would stay this way for a while. But fortunately, the Rockets were able to pull off arguably the most impactful trade in recent memory. Harden was the player they needed to get back into contention. He has led the Rockets to the playoffs for 5 straight seasons, including a Western Conference Finals appearance, while being a major MVP candidate. Honestly, nobody thought this trade was bad at the time it happened, and the Thunder did win 60 games in the following season. But in hindsight, this James Harden trade will go down as one of the most influential trades in history, as it shifted the entire NBA landscape and caused the downfall of a dynasty before it even began. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the video and stay tuned for more in the future. I'll see you next time.